Hello and welcome to E-Bible Fellowship's Evening Bible Studies with your host and Bible teacher, Chris McCann. We invite you to our website at ebiblefellowship.org for additional Bible studies. And now with his study in the book of Romans, here's Chris McCann.
Good evening and welcome to E-Bible Fellowship's Bible study in the book of Romans. Tonight is study number 21 of Romans chapter 3, and we'll be reading from verse 11. There is none that understandeth, there is none that seeketh after God. They are all gone out of the way. They are together become unprofitable. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. Their throat is an open sepulchre. With their tongues have they used deceit. The poison of asps is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their ways, and the way of peace have they not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. And I'll stop reading there. Now we had spent the last couple of studies looking at the first part of verse 11 that says there is none that understandeth, and we could probably go on looking at that for quite a while longer, but we're going to move on to the next part of the verse that says there is none that seeketh after God. There is none that seeketh after God. And, our first reaction might be, well, that can't be true. It's not accurate. It cannot be accurate. Doesn't God know? Doesn't, the writer of Romans, the Apostle Paul, doesn't he understand? Isn't he aware that there are tons of people, just masses of people all across the earth who seek after God? There's numerous religions. There's, 1.35 billion Hindus, and got these figures from Google. 1.35 billion Hindus, 1.8 billion Muslims, and about 2 billion professed Christians. There's also 535 million Buddhists. Now, if you add that up, that is the majority of people in the world. And that's not taking into account the many other religions. Certainly, practically everyone seeks after God. You cannot get it more opposite. Where God is saying there is none that seeketh after him. How can anything be so inaccurate? This is what, individuals of the world might think when they look at the religions of the world and the people who are caught up in those religions. They won't understand what God is saying here at all. Yes, it's true that there are billions of people in the world that seek after God, but they do so according to their own terms. They do so in an improper manner. What God is saying in this verse and some others in the Bible that say the same thing is that there are none that seek him, not a single human being in any of the world's religions, not a single one seeks after him in a proper manner. And what is that proper manner? Well, we'll look at that later. But that is exactly what God is saying. He is saying that professed Christians, and right now we can say, yes, those within the churches and congregations of the world will all fall under this category. The professed Christians are not seeking him properly, and certainly the Muslims are not seeking him properly, and the Buddhists are not seeking him properly, and the Hindus and the Shintoists and so on. Not a single one out of the billions are seeking him properly. And that's the reason that God says none seek him. And this is backed up. Of course, this is a quote from Psalm 14 and Psalm 53. In Psalm 14, it says in verse 1, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They have done abominable works. There is none that doeth good. Jehovah looked down from heaven upon the children of men. So that's the vantage point of God. Heaven is above, and God looks down upon the children of men. Is he just looking down upon a single nation? No, he's looking down upon the whole earth and all of mankind who he is referring to as the children of men. And when he takes in this all-encompassing view of mankind, and he's not looking down on man's outward circumstances, he's not looking at the outward trappings of man in any way, his height, his color, his or her sex. He's not looking at that. He's looking upon the hearts of men. He's looking deep within their soul, as the scriptures tell us that all things are naked and open unto the eyes of God concerning the hearts of men. And so he looked down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there were any that did understand and seek God. They're all gone aside. They're all together become filthy. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. So God looked down to see if there were any that understood or did understand and seek God. They're all gone aside. They're all together become filthy. Well, yeah, but God looked down. This is written in the Psalms. It's a Psalm of David who lived 3,000 years ago. And so the world's changed. The same people God looked down upon there are no longer with us. And there's so many more people, so many good people. No. You see, that assessment is accurate of all people at all times throughout the history of the world since the fall of man. If everyone was wicked, if there were none good then, if none understood then, if none sought after God then, you can be certain they certainly will not at this time. We're living at the worst of times. We're living when God has given man up to the desperate wickedness of his own heart. And just look around. And that's exactly what we see daily in this world, all over the earth, the wicked deeds of sinful people. And this is an assessment of the heart of man. Yes, as the Lord moved David to write it 3,000 some years ago, but it's the same assessment, remember, that was in the days of Noah. If we turn back to Genesis chapter 6, and in verse 5, it says, And Jehovah saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. That is another all-encompassing view. It's looking at the heart, as God only is capable of doing. He tells us in Jeremiah 17, after declaring, The heart of man is desperately wicked and deceitful above all things. Who can know it? And then the next verse says, I, Jehovah, search the hearts and the reins. God knows. He's aware. And he saw only evil continually in all the world, mankind, prior to the flood, and Noah lived thousands of years before David. Why is this? Whenever God comes and takes a look, that's what he sees, because that is what is in man. He's dead in trespasses and sins. He is a sinner, and it is the common lot of all human beings, unless God does a work of salvation as he did with Noah, as Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Apart from those exceptions, then this will be the condition of man. And, it's not possible, by the way, for an individual that God has saved, like Noah, if Noah has children, or anyone who God has saved, David or Samuel or Joseph or anyone that became saved, it's not possible for them to pass on their salvation to their children through natural birth, through the physical birth. That's a physical process. And the part of the man that God saved is the spiritual part, the soul. So the child born to the elect person who God did save and who was a recipient of God's grace will be born like every other child in their sin. This is, an error that many religions make. They assume, well, because I go to synagogue, and that would be another religion, the Jewish religion, or I go to the mosque, or I go to the church, and I'm a regular attender, a faithful churchgoer, and I have my children while I'm in the church, and then I take a couple steps, I have them baptized and bring them up in the church, that they are saved. That's an assumption that is often made, and it's never been true. It's never been true. No, God will have mercy upon whom he will have mercy, and he will have compassion upon whom he will have compassion. And it's true that a person brought under the hearing of the word during the church age, that would have been the right place to bring up children, as the Spirit of Christ was operating in the churches and congregations. And it's possible God could have used the word to save one of a man's children, or maybe two, or it's also possible that none were saved, because it's all according to God's grace and his program of predestination, and as far as who he chooses and does not choose. So here we read God's assessment of mankind in Psalm 14. And if we go back to Psalm 10, we find where God is addressing the wicked. In verse 2, the wicked in his pride doth persecute the poor. Let them be taken in the devices that they have imagined. For the wicked boasteth of his heart's desire, and blesseth the covetous, whom Jehovah abhorreth. The wicked, through the pride of his countenance, will not seek after God. God is not in all his thoughts. There is a supporting scripture to these other verses in Romans and Psalm 14. The wicked will not seek after God. And then we have that follow-up statement, God is not in all his thoughts. And there would be one of the characteristics of improper seeking. That is, the wicked can certainly identify with a religion. He can be a Muslim or a Jew or a Christian, and he can go to church and he can go to the mosque or synagogue, and he can pull out the Bible or whatever holy book, and he can spend even long hours there, become heavily involved in the operation of things, become a deacon, an elder, really caught up in the workings of the church, and yet God is not in all his thoughts. God is not in all his thoughts. That's an important truth. Well, how's it possible for God to be in all of anyone's thoughts? Oh, you see, what did Genesis 6 tell us? If we go back to Genesis chapter 6, it really reveals something about thoughts, where, again, in verse 5, and Jehovah saw that the wickedness of men was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Now, it's not saying the thoughts of his mind or, where the gray matter is located, his conscious thinking. It's not telling us what was going through his mind. Often what goes through a wicked individual's mind is wickedness, but he could have had nice thoughts intellectually from time to time, but down within, down in the soul that is dead in trespasses and sins, that is what God is referring to, that the thoughts of his heart, and in the Bible, heart, mind, and soul are synonyms. The thoughts of his soul were only evil continually. This is the same thinking that goes on in the life of a child conceived in his mother's womb. As the Bible says, and there are, people of the world, secularists, they would mock this kind of statement because they don't understand. They're ignorant of what God is saying. In Psalm 58, we read in verse 2, yea, in heart ye work wickedness. Notice the location of the working of wickedness, the heart, the soul. In heart ye work wickedness, ye weigh the violence of your hands in the earth. The wicked are estranged from the womb, they go astray as soon as they be born, speaking lies. Now, this is why a verse like this would be mocked, because everyone knows that a child who's born into the world cannot speak. They're unable to speak. Their ability to think and form words has not developed. Maybe as they're in the womb, yes, they certainly know maybe about. They certainly hear their parents speaking and so forth, but they cannot speak for some time, year and a half or 13 months or whatever after they're born. But God says as soon as they be born, they're speaking lies, because he's not referring to what's coming out of their mouth, but what's coming out of their heart, as we saw in Psalm 14. Remember again, verse 1, the fool has said in his heart. To say something is to speak it. And the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. That's a lie. That's a lie. When does the fool start to speak that lie in his heart? As soon as he be born. Because he is dead in his soul, dead in sin. And this is why he will not seek after God, as Psalm 10 is telling us. The wicked, through the pride of his countenance, will not seek after God. God is not in all his thoughts. So when God is not in all the thoughts of the heart of the wicked, he can give an outward appearance of being a diligent seeker of the Lord, of being a very holy religious person, as many in the religions of the world do. Yes, they're known for their prayers. They're known for their constant looking to God and following the religious vows and system of their religion. They're so careful to do it all, and and they will uphold whatever holy day their religion calls for, and yet deep down their heart, there's only evil continually. They're speaking lies in their heart. God is not in all the thoughts of their heart because there's been no change in heart. So, as a result, their seeking after God is improper. And in actuality, they are not truly seeking after God.
You've been listening to eBible Fellowship's Evening Bible Studies with your host and Bible teacher, Chris McCann. Visit our website at ebiblefellowship.org for additional studies. Until next time, may the Lord's perfect will be done.